Bop. And here we're talking. Hey, welcome to
Nice.
Welcome to Waking the Kraken. I'm Wes Potts.
I'm Alex Kahneman.
And on Waking News this week, I believe Alex is going to take over this one for a minute and discuss what we're going to talk about.
So, we are in the midst of the Me Too movement, and a lot more, celebrities and public icons and figures are coming out, or I should say accusations are coming out against them, against alleged sexual assault and rape. There's a bunch that we're all familiar with.
Harvey Weinstein,
Louis C.K. Obviously Judge Kavanaugh.
We talked about this one. Who was it? He was in that Netflix show and stuff.
Kevin Spacey. Yeah, and we've seen the effects of it, and honestly, it's the first time in history that I feel like women have felt the strength to be able to come out, and as well as the support to come out and talk about these things. And the latest one would be Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's the director of the Hayden Planetarium.
Yeah,
and he is also the host of Cosmos, which was on Fox and
Star Talk.
Yeah, and he does the podcast Star Talk.
Yep.
Yeah. But he had 3 separate women come out and report different allegations against him. One including, one was, we'll do from least to worst. Predatory behavior, him allegedly looking up somebody's dress, and an actual rape claim.
Yeah, like drug and rape claim.
Yes. And so we figured we would talk about that a little bit, and and just kind of break down how it seems to appear. And he recently only released a single statement on it. He was silent for a while because he didn't really feel like his opinion should be posted all over the media at first.
Right.
But he did release one long statement where he kind of detailed his perception of all of those encounters and what his views and stance on everything was. And so what all have you read so far?
I read a couple of things from the news, I heard about it. You texted me about it yesterday,
yes.
So I didn't even know what was going on at the moment.
Right.
And then I read a couple of the tweets, and then I saw the tweet that he linked to Facebook where he had his actual and that's what I read this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I read the one about the case in 2008. Mm-hmm. 2018, or it was 2009, 2000 something, and then 2018 is the most recent, and then the latest one is the one that's after that, which is the one in the early 80s.
Correct. Yeah. So basically, we'll go ahead and start with the predatory behavior one. Whenever he was working on Cosmos, he had a kind of production assistant who would pick him up from his home every day, make sure that he got to the production day on time every day. And he ended up spending a lot of time with this woman. He even details how basically that they would have all sorts of conversations about all sorts of things. And over the course of production, he ended up spending hundreds of hours with just this one person, and having one-on-one time and conversation. Now, what she's saying is that basically that he has displayed, basically behavior that you wouldn't expect from a married man, and that he had been coming on to her and trying to seduce her on one occasion.
There was, in his writing at least, and I haven't really read her statements, but I know she had said something about how, or he had said something about how she gives everyone hugs on set.
Yes.
And then he had made the comment that could have been misconstrued as, if I give you a hug, I might want something more,
right?
Kind of thing, which I think is where the initial creepy factor went. And then I think the thing is, with that one, that was the trail of logic that I could understand.
Yeah.
Where a young girl or a young woman hears if I give you she gives everyone a hug. Mm-hmm. And then some guys if I give you a hug, I'll want something more. And then later, from what I read, was the big incident was at the wrap up of everything.
Yeah.
He had invited her over to have wine and cheese at his house whenever she was dropping him off. And his statement was that he kept saying that, well, there's this other thing that you can go to if you want to try to make it not seem weird.
Right.
And if there's one thing that I remember about Neil deGrasse Tyson, from what I've heard, is he is a big wine enthusiast.
That's for sure.
So that one wasn't as... I mean, granted, it is weird that she was the only one that he invited over, but it makes sense. If you're... it's hazy on that, because the thing is, like, it's not like inviting someone in for coffee. Like, wine and cheese, like, does have a romantic connotation, but it also, like, if you're just kind of a guy that's an academic and doesn't really understand social cues, I think, because he does seem like that. The guy who wears a cowboy hat to Reykjavik, Iceland.
Right. That's for sure.
But I do think, yeah, like, just because you like wine and cheese and your friends that are of your same age and stuff and probably in your same profession are like, oh, wine and cheese is innocuous.
Yeah.
I could see how a young person, even such as myself, would just be like, all right, wine and cheese is generally romantic.
Yeah, and especially someone who's just like a production assistant whose like main job is to like drive and just help out with whatever is needed. Like, I mean, she's probably a young lady and she's probably, you know, like not got as much money as he does. And so like wine tends to be a little bit more expensive of the alcohols. Right. And so like it's kind of like a high luxury that a lot of people don't really get into, especially at our age.
Right.
And yeah, I would agree. Whenever he said, you know, like I would give you a hug, but then I would want something more. Like that was an inappropriate statement.
Yeah, that was really the, like, for me, I was like, that was the creepiest thing that happened in that. Yeah. Like, where it's like, I get people being awkward, but that one I was like, all right, that's just a weirdo statement. You gotta really think about what you're saying.
Yeah, and like you said, he probably didn't even think about it. He was just like, I'm just trying to like let her know that I think she's attractive and that like I just want to keep this professional because I really think you're pretty. And like, which I could see as being like, I'm trying to give you a compliment and like I'm trying to just, you know, be like flirty without overstepping a bound, but like not really understanding what bounds are.
Right.
And so on that one, I feel like ultimately, like if you know, if what's read in the statements is true, like just because he didn't quite understand that what he said was uncomfortable or inviting her over for wine and cheese was uncomfortable.
Right.
I don't really understand like if that's really like if he really did anything wrong. And like I mean, but I do think that like she does need to like come forward, tell him about it, and like talk to him.
And I think I don't. From what I read in these, though, are anybody like trying to sue him or anything for this, or is it just like them saying he made me feel really weird? Because that's the only thing that I didn't get off of the things that I read.
Right.
Was like, are they pursuing legal actions? Or are they just like saying like, hey man, like you kind of creepy sometimes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as I know, right now, there's not a whole lot of media coverage about the actual action being taken other than the investigation by Fox Network and the National Geographic.
Sure, for both Star Talk and Cosmos.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so basically, I kind of feel like what he's working on or what they're doing is they're going to run the investigation, and then if they find any more information as to like the validity of the allegations, then I think they might start moving forward into legal proceedings.
Right.
The second incident, this one like really kind of got me. Like I was like, well,
is it the tattoo one?
It's the tattoo one.
It's the tattoo one.
So basically, the woman says that he attempted to try and look up her dress or under her dress, and essentially the way he had put it was, some young lady had come up to him, offering or asking to get a picture, and he says that anytime he sees tattoos or any sort of galactic, like, you know,
just
bling,
Cosmo, different shirts, shoes, like things.
Like he wants to make sure that he's pointing it out, and like he gets excited about it because it's somebody else who cares about it as much as him. And she said she was wearing a sleeveless dress and had a tattoo of the solar system on her shoulder, and so he had pushed her shoulder strap away just for a second to see if Pluto was on the top of her shoulder, because he wanted to see if Pluto was included, because he's one of the few scientists who like really
killed Pluto.
Yeah, no, he's the one who's a proponent of Pluto.
Oh, is he? I thought he was the one that said like he killed Pluto.
Yeah. So basically, like, regardless of what his explanation was for that, all he had to do was say, is Pluto on your shoulder?
I concur on that one. That was the one that I was like, touching people to even get a better look at their tattoo.
Yeah,
doesn't make much sense to me. Like,
and like and I don't think you should be moving people's clothes at all. Like, it's there for a reason, and they're wearing, especially women's clothing. A lot of women's clothing is designed to look a specific way and function a specific way, and it's like by moving or even like just like touching the clothing to try to see something, you might like completely make the dress like, you know, fail in some way, and then you end up like exposing this woman in a way you weren't intending.
I mean, this is I mean, I get that even just as a man kind of thing though too. Like the thing is, I have a very large tattoo on my arm, and like it's covered up predominantly by a shirt almost all the time. Yeah. And if someone's like, "What is that?" then I'll probably like lift it up and show them, kind of thing.
Right.
But I don't really like. I wouldn't like it if someone just like grabbed my arm, or not even grab my arm, but even just like tried to like pull up my shirt and be like, "What are you?" What? Yeah. It's just weird in general for people to try to like pull up clothes or anything like that on any person without expressing what they're going to do.
Yeah, I even, like, as I started growing my hair out more, I would have times where I would be, like, at a coffee shop working on homework or studying, and then, like, I would just feel someone's hand on the back of my head touching my hair, and I would just turn around and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they're just like, "Your hair's beautiful." And it's like, well, cool, that doesn't mean you just get to come up and touch it.
Yeah, no, and I think that was the part for me. Like after reading that one too, I was like, I get those two, I get really well, and then the other one is the third case, the '80s case, is the one that's like, I don't want to say that I don't believe her, but the thing is also like, I've only read his side of the story. I haven't read her side of the story. Like, I don't know why she dropped out of college. Like, she could have dropped out of college because of something that had to do with that. Yeah. Or she could have just dropped out of college because he said everyone dropped, or a lot of people dropped out.
Yeah, well, I think he had mentioned that, I think she said she dropped out of college because she was pregnant and was going to have a baby and wanted to focus on taking care of her family instead.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, that was years later. A couple of years later down the road, because he said she was a freshman at the time that they had been dating.
Yeah,
and he was I think a year or two older than her.
Yeah,
and so like it was completely feasible that like, you know, like a couple of years later she still hadn't finished her degree, and then like she was with somebody else and got pregnant. But something I do have to say is like the fact that she claims to not remember the night is kind of like, I hate to say it, but that's like going to be the downfall of the entire case. So if legal action is taken in that instance, what's going to end up happening is like the judges are going to say, well, if you don't remember what happened that night, and we can't obviously test your blood for drugs that have been gone since the 80s,
right?
Then like there's not going to be a real way to verify or nullify the accusation or there's the fact that it may have even happened. For example, if a young woman goes through some sort of sexual harassment experience like that, if they say that, well, I had drank so much that I was like blacking out,
right? Then
they're going to say, well, if you blacked out, then you may not remember giving consent. So therefore, we can't either convict or say that he's innocent. So we have to say, I'm sorry, but we can't really do anything about it because there just isn't enough information. And so whenever I read that she claimed to not remember the night at all, like, yes, that would be in line with being drugged, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, unfortunately, like if it really did happen, I don't think there's ever really going to be a way to fully know.
No, obviously not. Not until time machines are invented. No, and then weird espionage happens. But no, and I think the main point of the whole situation though too, with that one especially, because that's the biggest accusation that he has. And I think the point is on this also. Not only does this destroy careers or pulls like sponsorships, it also can destroy marriages.
That's for sure.
And you know what? If he did it, then his marriage probably deserves to be destroyed and stuff, like kind of thing. Like that's kind of one of those things. I think it's such a gray area right now on the investigation that, like you said, I just learned about it last night. Long story short, from that whole thing, is Neil deGrasse Tyson creepy? In my opinion, yeah, he can probably be a creep. He probably doesn't understand what he says a lot of times, or doesn't see how it's like peculiar. He thinks he's being a nice guy, kind of thing, but it can come off as creepy if you don't read your audience.
Yeah. And also, like, whenever somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is a scientist who is now in the public eye, like he basically spent most of his life just being a nerd on campus, and like he just dealt with the people that were around him and the people that worked in labs and people in classes with him, and then like whenever he started working, at the Hayden Planetarium, like that was him probably starting to get used to like general public, but he's still like, this is my business, this is where I work,
right?
And and blah blah blah, and so on and so forth, and so now you start giving him a bunch of really successful media shows, and people like started bringing him on to shows as like a guest appearance, and being like, okay, like this is the guy who's going to teach us about
like
this.
Hot Ones.
Yeah, exactly. So like the more and more that you expose somebody to that, the easier it will be in their mind to start normalizing experiences with total strangers, but having to pretend to be totally comfortable with them.
Sure. Well, and I think the thing is, any person wants a wide variety of different opinions and stuff in their friendship group.
Right.
Like, it's boring if everyone's just the same. Like, if all you hang out with people that just want to play video games, eventually you're going to get bored of being around video games in general.
Yeah.
So I get the idea of like how maybe he is an awkward fellow who like goes through like things once he starts getting famous, meets all these exciting and new and interesting people that are doing things far different than whatever path he chose.
Exactly.
But the other thing is like, yeah, I think he made a point too with it where he's like, if they would have let me known, then like I would have apologized immediately. And though that's a noble endeavor, the thing is also like, I've been offended sometimes by people. I've felt awkward around people sometimes. I'm not just going to be like, that makes me feel awkward, man.
Yeah.
Like, not all the time. So if it's really awkward, I'll say it. But like, most of the time I'll just kind of brush it off and be like, well.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But another thing that I had thought about too was like the woman with the tattoo. She had come up to him for a picture.
Yeah.
And like, I almost can guarantee you, if you find a picture of Neil deGrasse Tyson with somebody, he's going to be touching them in some way.
Right.
Because they want to have their arms around him, or they're going to want to be like shaking hands, or like making some sort of fun gesture. And so like I could also see where in his mind, oh, this is such a normal thing for me. Like maybe he's seen a bunch of tattoos and on those people have always like been like, sure, let me show you.
Right.
And then like he's just so used to that like that character or that person, the person that comes up to him in his life just becomes like a character that he's familiar with.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, I've had this interaction a bunch. And then he forgets the fact that, oh, this is a completely different person that I've never met before. And so his comforts kind of cross the line.
And I mean, like, the other thing, though, is too, yeah, we can't also excuse that. Like, that's
not
the
at
other
all.
thing. The other thing is, yeah, just because he's a famous scientist and we assume that he's a nerd and has has fewer social skills or different social skills doesn't mean that, like, if he did do these things and made people feel uncomfortable, that he is not prone to the same repercussions.
Right.
I believe that Harvey Weinstein or anyone else is. Just because Harvey Weinstein's a movie producer and Neil deGrasse Tyson is a brilliant scientist, doesn't mean that
not at all.
It's different.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody deserves and should be treated with the exact same parameters when it comes to the law.
Yeah, especially when it comes to sexual assault cases, sexual indiscretions.
Well, there's this thing that I always think about that I like to refer to as mutual respect. I feel like in previous generations, respect is something that you earn from everybody else. But, like, that's the wrong way to think about it. Respect, there should be, like, a standard high respect for every person that you come into contact with. And only whenever they start to disrespect you without any cause or any reason is the only moment where I start to say, okay, well, my actual respect for you as a person has gone down now. So you've earned a loss of respect. Not that I'm going to start disrespecting you.
Right.
But, like, the way I would start to feel about that person is going to start to dwindle. Like, you can't grow somebody into being more respectful because, like, that puts them on a pedestal, and then when you treat them as such, they're going to act as though they're on the pedestal. Yeah. And so maybe that's something that we as a society need to start thinking about a little bit more is, like, why don't we start trying to give everybody a very high baseline of respect, and, like, only whenever they've shown you that they don't deserve that, then you can say, all right, this is somebody I don't really need to be around anymore. Right. And and it's just as simple as that. And if you can't treat people the way you would treat yourself or your mom or your brother or sister, your dad, or your best friends, if you can't treat them that way, and you feel like, oh well, like I wasn't thinking about it. Well, like then you're not really trying to be a person on the level of being a human, and trying to be, you know, like we're all in this together, you know, because we're not just a bunch of people who have like different levels of like how important that we actually are. Like it's all perceived importance, and it's all like kind of fantasy, you know, like.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, well, and there's no like caste system for respect either.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Just because, like I said, someone is an elected official doesn't mean like do they reserve like a certain cadence when they first step into office and everything? Absolutely, they're still learning a new job probably. But like eventually they shouldn't. Like if they keep messing up, they should be subjected to anyone else with criticism, and if they take the criticism correctly, then, you know, mission accomplished, they solved the problem. It's the same with Neil deGrasse Tyson. If Neil deGrasse Tyson learns from this, learns that he, you know, needs to maybe work on his social cues and everything, I can't imagine why we wouldn't, like, let him back to being in our homes as, like, Star Talker. And he does a lot of good for the scientific community.
Yeah, definitely does.
But, yeah, I think it's a matter of reworking his image.
Yeah, because it is ultimately really important that the people who are on the screens that we put in front of our face are always top of the baseline respect level, you know? Because if they're not, that means we are allowing people to be glorified for their bad deeds. Like, for example, Guy Fieri is like an amazing humanitarian, and like he basically gives, you know, national advertisement to companies who could never afford it, you know? And like his whole TV show is about making other good places to eat blow up and get more attention, and like almost everything about what he does has been, you know, like respectable, even in his personal life with the way he takes care of his family. But like, for instance, another popular chef who was way more popular would be somebody like Anthony Bourdain.
Right.
But Anthony Bourdain had multiple drug problems. He was an alcoholic. He was you know, basically ran around on whoever his partners were, and like that's something that he talked about, and we basically praised him as being this amazing guy, and then we basically just shit on Guy Fieri.
Right.
You know, like it's a standard joke, but it's a real like kind of like slap in the face to how we like look at the people.
Yeah,
that we consider that are famous.
That's an interesting analogy. Like I never actually really thought about it in that manner. Like how much I liked listening to like Anthony Bourdain because he felt like a rock star.
Yeah.
And then there's Guy Fieri who feels like the guy that's really into rock music that wants to be a rock star.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, there's the dork that wants to be a rock star, and then there's the guy that looks like he's not trying. And that's like, I get that. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and it's just, I think that is super important. Like we need to be able to hold the people that are on our screens to a very high level of respect. And they need to be able to hold their respect at a very high level from us. Like it's their job to, you know, be an icon. And when you're going to be an icon, you gotta understand that you're going to influence every person that looks at you in some way.
Right.
And a lot of those people are going to be young children.
Well, the other side of the coin is you never know if you're going to blow up and be famous. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't know that he didn't get into science and stuff to go have a TV show. He got into science because he wanted to do science.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden someone goes, well, you're candid and interesting enough, and you can describe things to a camera easy enough, and you seem to have a lot of confidence, so why don't you do this thing? And now he's a big time celebrity,
right?
Especially in the science community. You know, like, yeah, that just goes to show you, like, don't think that you're never going to make enough waves to actually not have something like this come back to you.
Exactly.
Just be a good person, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's enough on that one.
Yeah, I think we discussed the news this week. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, as always, I'm Wes Potts.
And I'm Alex Kahneman. Okay, goodbye.